You know, we were answering questions before, and we were talking about the mom who wrote in and said, I feel guilt about, you know, labeling my son. And we talked about a lot of things. And you wrote back and said, I feel like if my son could, that he would say, Mom, don't say that about me. And you know what I want to say to that? If that's what your gut tells you, then that's what you need to run with. I really feel like as parents, when we listen to that voice inside, we're really at our highest. And if that's what you feel like your son would say to you, then I want to encourage you to honor that. And if that's the case, maybe there isn't anybody you need to tell. Truly, it's so important that we put our kids first and honor them and honor our gut where they're concerned. So I want to encourage you to honor that. And you know what? Everybody else just has to get a whoopee and be okay with that. Because really that's the important thing. And I think it's great that you can identify that and know that. So I applaud you. And it's different for all of our kids. And it's different for all of us as too. So you run with that. That's my advice. Someone else had written in and asked a question that happened to go with our myth of the day, which was supposed to be tomorrow. But because we had this Vulcan mind meld about IQ, I thought we'd jump ahead and do it today. So the question, they say, hi, Shannon, welcome back. My question for you is, how important are IQ scores for our kids? My son had an IQ test when he was first diagnosed with PDD-NOS at age 4. His communication was so immature, with many O's there, so immature at that time. I know he gets multifactorial tests in his public school once every 3 years, but I don't think it's the same IQ test. My greatest concern is about that first score following him and being the first label each of his teachers see each school year. Do you ever wonder about the importance of these scores for Gem 2? Thanks again for all you are doing. So our myth of the day for tomorrow, now today, was about IQ. And there were 2 points that I wanted to make about IQ tests. And the first one is that IQ tests are only accurate when there is enough language present to validate the test. So, And the second point is that a low IQ is not a part of an autism diagnosis. So if you've had your child, if they gave them an IQ test when they first were evaluating them, and the IQ test came back low, it's entirely possible that it came back with an asterisk saying we weren't really able to validate these results because there wasn't enough language. I would look into that to see for your own knowledge. There are some people who do an IQ test who maybe wouldn't have put that little asterisk there. The first time that my son's IQ was tested, it was devastating. Absolutely devastating, because my understanding of an IQ test was that you could test anybody at any age and it was going to see what their quotient was. And I was hanging a lot on that IQ test because I wanted to see a really high score, and that is not what we saw. We saw a really low score. So low that I can't even remember, but I remember crying and thinking, oh my goodness. And saying, so what does this mean in terms of, here in the state of California, they still use the R word. And I said, is that what this means? And I was told, oh, no. We really can't test the IQ until there's enough language present to be able to validate the results. These results weren't validated. But I was stuck with this score that was so low, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I put that aside, and I worried about how is this, because I knew it went into a record. But the truth of the matter is, if the school didn't give the IQ test, the only way the school can see the IQ test is if you sign a paper saying that they can, and you might want to check into that to see, did you sign that piece of paper? Because you can rescind it and ask that it be taken out. And you have the ability, the testing that they do for the school, they probably aren't going to do that kind of an IQ test unless you specifically ask, and then they may say no, that they don't want to. You have the ability later on to go and get a different IQ test. I know, because we were at the Center for Autism and related disorders. My son got testing every year that he was getting intensive ABA. So there were 5 IQ tests. And there are many things that come with IQ tests. And what I've learned is that you really shouldn't put a whole lot of store into the IQ tests. And I'm sure that there are people in this building who would shudder me saying that. But as a parent, I would tell you, don't hang a whole lot onto it because it's going to change with a child with autism because of the language component. If your child is a child who doesn't have a great deal of receptive language, you're not going to get an accurate read. You can come back later on and get the accurate read. I would spend a little bit of time making sure that it's not in the school folder. And if it's really bothering you, and I don't know, you said that your child was tested when they were 4, maybe it's time to get another IQ test. Although realize that if the receptive language still isn't there and some of the expressive language still isn't there, it's still not going to be an accurate read. So weigh whether or not it's something you want to invest time and money in. And it's your child's time, your time, and a professional's time, and it's going to be some money for all of that time, right? But I can tell you that with my son, there was that first score that was so low, shockingly low. And then the needle moved a little bit after a year, and then it moved just a little bit more. And the 3rd year that my son was tested, I remember sitting in the room and they said, now, here are the test results, and there's 2 different parts of the test. And one of the tests, this is the number that he got. And that's really great. This number is really great. We're really excited about this number. And here's this other number on the 2 parts of the test that's a good number. It's a good number. It's totally okay number. It's not like stellar like this other number. And so we put these 2 numbers together and we average them out, and it's 1 point higher than the low number. And I said, wait a minute. I've averaged numbers before. You got this high number, you got this, okay number, and you average the 2 together, it should be in the middle of them. No, it's not with an IQ test, because as was explained to me, if there is more than like a 5-point disparity between the 2 numbers, then the high number gets thrown out. And I said, but what if that number is accurate? Well, he would have to test again and have that number be that way. And then, it could be validated if he tested, but it won't. So let go of it because it won't happen again. It's way too high. It won't happen again. And I said, okay. And I put it to the side and let go. Except the next year we came back and the numbers were almost exactly the same. Because our kids are different. Our kids don't fit these tests. They just don't. And I had to remind myself that it's important for me to see him clearly for who he is and what his abilities are. And it's just this year for the first time, because my son, he wasn't showing it in the classroom. I think there were a couple of people along the way who thought my son probably wasn't going to be at the top of his class. That's really how it looked for many, many years. But certainly in terms of math and those kinds of skills, my son is. Yeah, he's doing just fine and is more than proficient in the English stuff now, which is a huge accomplishment for a little boy who wasn't speaking. But we see a clear strength with him, and we're trying to catch him up on and get him caught up on the part that isn't the clear strength and let him fly on the part that is strength. And this year, for the first time, the teacher sees that and sees that there is this strength because it's shown up on enough of the standardized testing. But I would tell you, don't count on people knowing it. You tell them. Tell them all the time your child's strengths. Tell them what you're working on at home for the things that are the things you're catching up. But you know what your child's strengths are. Every single IEP meeting, every single time you sit down with the teachers to have a progress report, spoon feed it to them. Spoon feed it to them. And if you feel like that is part of his record, get it off there. And be done with that and let go of that. Because IQ, Those tests, I just don't think that they fit our kids. And until there is a test that fits our kids, we're going to fit it ourselves, right? And know that IQ is not a part of the DSM-4 or the DSM-5. It's not on there. It has nothing to do with autism, nothing whatsoever. And keep telling your teachers that and telling the administrators that. I even went and said I nominated my own child for the GATE program because his teacher didn't. And I said, I don't care what she thinks. I care what I think. I nominate my child for the GATE program. They don't have the GATE program anymore because there's no money, but it doesn't matter. I nominated my child for that. And you can too. You can too, because it takes a parent or a teacher to nominate them. So hang in there. Don't get hung up on the number. The number doesn't mean anything. Right? It really doesn't until your child has enough language for it to be validated. And any good test statistician would back that up and say this number is not valid until the child has enough language, which might be when the child's 13 or it might be when they're 22. But until then, it doesn't mean anything. They could be genius and it couldn't register it. So that's my advice.